Treasure Island, Chapter 19. I strike the Jolly Roger and let Israel hands lend a hand. Swinging about on the bowsprit, I knew I would be tossed into the sea. With heart racing, I made my way crawlingly back onto the deck. My eyes took in a sight of disaster and despair. Mud was caked everywhere, and a broken bottle rolled about, to and fro. I saw that the sails were all up, but that the two watchmen lay in a heap on the deck. I saw Israel and the other sailor roll with the wind, and though Israel moved, the other was stock still on his back, his face painted over with a horrible smile. He was dead in a pool of blood. Suddenly, Israel began to moan and roll around. I saw that he was wounded and sick and bleeding. I walked slowly toward his body and stood over it. "Come aboard, Mr. Hands," I said ironically. With this, he rolled over and called for something to drink. He was parched with thirst. I knew then that he would rouse himself. I had no time to lose. I ran below decks to find everything a disaster. There was mud and broken glass everywhere. Books were torn open and stores were scattered randomly. In the dim light, I searched for food and a keg of water. I found biscuits, pickled fruit, raisins, and some cheese. I brought these on deck, and after eating and drinking my fill, gave Hans some of the cheese and a biscuit, as well as some of the water to drink. "Are you much hurt?" I asked him. He nodded and groaned and said, "Well, he's dead. Now, where did you come from?" "I've come to take back the ship, and you'll call me captain until further notice." He looked at me sourly, but said nothing. I told him I would drop the Jolly Roger. I scampered up and cut the flag loose happily. "There's an end to Long John Silver," I said. "Well now," said Hans, "this man and me were going to sail the ship back, but now he's dead and we need to sail it. So I propose you get me a kerchief to tie my bleeding leg with, and I'll help you sail it back." "I'm not stupid," I said. "I'm not going to sail back to Kidd's Cove where Silver is." "Well, I don't have much choice, do I? It's your ship now, and I'm wounded, so I'll sail wherever you want, by thunder." And with that, we made a deal. I tied his wound, and he ate a little, and we both began to sail the ship back to shore. Soon we were on our way, but as he gained strength, I saw his wounded look turn to a sneer. He began to watch me closely and craftily as he eyed me at my work. Now, under Israel's guidance, we made our way over the foamy deeps in the Hispaniola. We soon stopped again for another meal and began to talk. "Well now, Captain," he said, "I wonder if you could go down below decks and get me my glass. These old eyes could use a little help setting our course." He turned his gaze away from me and back out to sea. It was plain that he was up to something and wanted me off deck, but I thought I could outsmart him. "Of course," I said. "It won't take but a moment." With that, I ran below decks, and taking off my shoes, came up just behind him by way of another passage. There I could see him without being seen. I watched him come to life and drag himself with some effort toward the dead man. Once there, he pulled out a knife, and wiping the blood off, tucked it into his sleeve and scrambled back to his spot. It was clear he meant to have my life. As I ran back below to find his spyglass, I realized that he needed me to steer us back to shore. Once there, I would be in trouble, but for the moment I was safe. I clambered back up on deck and handed him his sleek brass instrument. "Now," he said, "you take my orders, Captain Hawkins, and we'll make shore in no time at all." He showed me where we might come in, and I ran about setting the sails and making sure that we hit our mark. "Steady, steady," said Hans at the last moment. I turned us hard and we made for our shore. I was so caught up in the work that it wasn't until the last moment that I sensed him behind me. I wheeled about and cried out as I saw him lunge for me. I let go of the sail and it quickly snapped at him and stopped him dead. Before he could recover, I ran away, but he was determined to get me. I quickly reached for my guns and pulled the trigger, only to find that the seawater had made them useless. I cursed my stupidity and ran again. He moved swiftly for a wounded man and soon boxed me in on deck. I dodged one way and he feigned the other. We played at this for a bit, each wary of the other. Then suddenly the ship struck the beach, and the jolt threw us both into the air. When it stopped, the ship was tilted, and there was no place to stand on deck. Hans was tied up with the dead man, while I scrambled up to the top of the mast. There I quickly primed my guns and made them ready. He looked up at me and sneered evilly. He put his knife in his teeth and began a slow and painful climb up the mast after me. Soon enough, he was too close for my liking. "One more step, Mr. Hans," I said, "and I'll blow your brains out." I even laughed a little, thinking myself the victor. He stopped. I could see his mind working slowly. He took the dagger from his mouth to speak. "Well," he said, "we're caught. I would have had you if not for that landing. But I don't have no luck, not I." I was smiling away when I noticed that his hand was slowly drawn back. He had reached his knife and let loose right at me, pinning my shoulder to the mast. I cried out in pain, and firing both pistols in shock, dropped them into the ocean. But they didn't fall alone. Israel Hands fell to a watery death along with them. End of chapter 19.